Look at the picture. 3 stellar examples of football talent, alongside the man who can fairly say he was instrumental in getting them for his beloved South Fremantle. The Darwin boys, Campbell, Lagona and Rioli, are no longer with the club, more's the pity, because it's Derby Day. What was it like in your house if you lost the Derby?
Very depressing, particularly when my grandmother was around.
And when you won it?
Well, won it very exhilarating, really. That's the feelings, you know, in those days.
Richard Woodgate knows of what he speaks. Apart from playing in red and white back in 1964, he's a Bulldog supporter for reasons of geography and history.
My grandmother was very, very much sort of South Fremantle, and anything, there was no really good in East Fremantle, and that's how the situation was.
A derby is a derby is a derby. 15,000 Freoites hardly had time to wet their whistle before Wilson struck for the Bulldogs.
Now, for those living outside the port, yes, you do play football, and yes, there are poisonous long-standing matchups. But down Freo way, the local derby, if not bigger than Ben-Hur, is certainly pushing it. Must be something to do with the bloodlines.
As a young boy, you know, I always had a football in my hand and played football where I could. And I was the only boy in the family, but I loved the game and I had that environment. And my grandfather was a trainer down there. He was previously a trainer at Boulder City. He was a guy who worked in the mines practically all his life and fought in the First World War in the trenches in France. And they called him Ruffy because of his rough hands when he was rubbing people down. My grandmother was very ardent. She was took players from the country in and boarded them and so forth. This is going back before the war. And so I grew up in that sort of environment. And my father played with South Fremantle. And so we grew up with football around us.
At this point, as with all good feuds, it gets a bit complicated. Family-wise, that is.
On my mother's side of the family, they lived in East Fremantle. In fact, I was born over in East Fremantle. And they were all East Fremantle. And my mother, she sort of a South Fremantle, I think mainly because of myself and my father. But so there was a lot of different clashes.
It sounds almost tribal, Richard.
It is very tribal, very tribal.
What happened if you strayed into somebody else's area?
Well, this is one of the things about it all, is that some people took it very seriously. Other people took it, you know, as a bit of fun, and particularly down the wharf where there was a lot of mixture in those days of South and East Fremantle. And it was very prevalent down there.
Now this is a fierce box on in the centre circle. It's all in there.
Twice a year, usually, the two tribes meet at one of the other's home ground and box on, both on and off the field.
Oh, in goes Thompson for East Perth, number 23. A savage box on wide of the pack. A South Fremantle player down as little Bahaji is right over the top of him. And that's one of the fiercest box-ons I've seen in Western Australian football.
Every derby's like a grand final, and it was very intense in those days. There was shows before the game, shows after the game. There was arguments and fights and so forth. And I can remember one day that my father was with a relation of mine, and a relation got into a argument and the guy next to him threw a punch and missed him and hit my father, so he had to go to the hospital.
Over football?
With stitches, yeah.
Richard Woodgate's contribution to the Bulldogs has been varied as fan, player and club official. But probably his greatest gift was made in 1970 when, transferred by his work to Darwin, he saw Sebastian Rioli and wanted him for South Fremantle.
Well, I just saw his pace. I saw his skills in his kicking, and I saw his determination, and I also saw the way that he could handle himself in relation to weaving in and out of the packs. And he was really quite exhilarating. In those days, it was a big decision both for our football club and also for Sibby and his family.
After Sebastian, there was a veritable flood of Riolis heading south. Emmanuel, Cyril, Johnny, Willie, Lawrence and more.
Michael to Morris Rioli at centre half forward. Big one by Rioli. It's a beauty, a great kick, a brilliant goal.
But that was then. It's a different football landscape in Western Australia today.
Rioli fires for goal from 65 metres. What a brilliant kick straight through the centre.
It's not what it used to be because of the AFL teams now in the competition here in West Australia.
Well, I suppose if we could call those days the glory days,
yes.
Do you reckon you can get them back?
I don't think while the AFL's here...
And it's going to be here.
Yeah, it's going to be here, that we'll never recover from it. But nevertheless, I think it has been shown if the AFL is not played in a particular, say, derby, we get very big crowds at derbies. And the thrill and the families from both sides of Fremantle, they come along in large numbers. And so I think it's the tradition's still there, but I'm not sure about the intensity of it. You know, we're old-timers, so we still think the same way. I'm not sure how the younger people feel now.
You have to beat Easts.
Yeah, and East Fremantle, likewise, they have to beat us.
Rioli draws the man, gives the ball to Campbell. Campbell goes across the face of the ground.
So today, no Riolis, no Basil Campbell, no Benny Vagona. But Souths are still fielding a league team with 2 Indigenous players, 3 in the reserves and 3 in the Colts.
Decides to loop a hand pass over the top to McGrath.
We have had a very good run in recent years, but now we're backing a little bit this year, so we'll wait and see what happens.
As you were against Claremont last week.
Yes, right, exactly. Yes, it's not going to be our year this year, I don't think.
Maybe not, but there's nothing about being a Bulldog supporter that precludes you from being an optimist.
Derbies are very unpredictable. Generally, quite often the underdogs come up and win it, and I think this coming game, we will be the underdogs, and I think that we could come up and surprise everybody and win this one.